From the bloody sands of Iwo Jima to the urban hellscape of Fallujah, the United States Marine Corps has always been defined by one thing: kicking in the door. For 80 years, they were the sledgehammer. They brought the tanks. They brought the artillery. They stormed the beach and dared the enemy to stop them. But today, they have done the unthinkable. Facing a world of hypersonic missiles and drone swarms, the Marine Corps has decided to strip itself naked. They are sealing up the well decks of their ships. They have thrown every single tank into the scrapyard. They are transforming from a sledgehammer into a ghost. Is this a stroke of genius or a strategic suicide pact? Why would the world's premier fighting force voluntarily give up its heavy armor? In the next war, will the Marines be the hunters or the hunted? First, let's look at what they are leaving behind. You see a ship like the USS Wasp, and you think transport. You're wrong. That is a floating fortress. At 40,000 tons, it displaces as much as a Charles de Gaulle, France's entire aircraft carrier. But what blows my mind isn't the missiles. It's what's inside. There's a fully functional hospital with 600 beds. 600! That is the scale of American projection. They don't just bring the war, they bring the entire support system of a small city. But the Navy got greedy. They looked at that massive hull and thought, what if we made it deadlier? So, for the first 2 America-class ships, they did something crazy. They sealed the well deck. They literally welded shut the back door where the hovercrafts and Marines come out. Why? To build a shrine to the F-35B Lightning II. By deleting the well deck, they made room for more aviation fuel and more hangars. A single LHA can now carry 20 F-35B. Do the math. 25th generation stealth fighters on a transport ship? That isn't support. That is a Lightning carrier. That single ship has an air force more powerful than 90% of the countries on Earth. But here's the rub. They realized that by sealing the well deck, they lost their soul. You can't invade an island with a fighter jet. You need boots in the mud. So, in the latest Flight 1 ships, they quietly put the well deck back. It's a lesson in hubris, but it shows the U.S. mindset. We want the stealth fighter and the hovercraft. They don't compromise, they escalate. Now, let's talk about something boring that wins wars. Logistics. Most armies load a ship like Tetris. Pack it tight. Use every inch. The Marines? They leave huge empty spaces. It's called combat loading or LIFO. Last in, first out. Imagine you are on a beach. You are taking fire. You need an armored vehicle now. You call the ship. If you are a normal army, the logistics officer says, sorry buddy, your tank is behind 500 crates of Spam. Wait 3 hours. In the U.S. Marines, the tank is sitting right at the front, ready to roll. This sounds simple, but it is excruciatingly expensive. It means sailing a $1 billion ship that is not fully loaded, just so you can access the gear you need instantly. That is the difference between a military and a global superpower. The luxury of inefficiency for the sake of survival. And it's not just about how they pack. It's about how they move. The old way was storm the beach, take the hill. The new way is the MV-22 Osprey. It flies twice as fast and 3 times as far as a helicopter. While the enemy is digging trenches on the beach, the Marines are flying over their heads, landing 300 miles inland and blowing up their radar. It turns amphibious assault into vertical envelopment. They don't want your land. They want your command center. If the V-22 change how they move, Force Design 2030 changes who they are. In 2020, the Commandant of the Marine Corps dropped a bomb. He announced the total divestment of all tank battalions. The internet exploded. Retired generals scream betrayal. How can you fight a war without tanks? Let me tell you a secret. Those generals are fighting the last war. Think about the Pacific. Thousands of tiny jungle islands. How do you get a 70-ton M1 Abrams onto a rock the size of a football field? And once it's there, what does it shoot at? In a war against a peer adversary like China, a tank on an island is just a metal coffin. It's too heavy to move and too big to hide. A $5 million tank is lunch for a $20,000 drone. So, the Marines made a cold, hard calculation. They traded armor for invisibility. They took the tank budget and bought long-range missiles. This is EABO, Expeditionary Advanced Base Operations. It sounds like a corporate buzzword, but the concept is terrifying. Instead of one big army, the Marines break into hundreds of tiny teams. They infest the islands. They hide in the jungle. They look like a rock or a tree or a fishing boat, but they are armed with anti-ship missiles. They turn the island itself into a stationary aircraft carrier. They aren't there to conquer. They are there to strangle the enemy navy. They are the insurgents of the sea. But wait, if you send 10 men to an island to shoot a missile, how do you get them out? It's risky. So the Marines asked, why send men at all? Meet the Nemesis, Navy Marine Expeditionary Ship Interdiction System. At first glance, it looks like a truck. Look closer. There is no driver, no seats, no steering wheel. It is a robot, a remote-controlled JLTV with 2 naval strike missiles strapped to its back. This is the future of area denial. One C-130 lands on a dirt strip. It kicks this robot out the back. The plane takes off. The robot drives itself into the jungle and waits. It sleeps. When an enemy destroyer sails past, this RC car from hell wakes up, fires 2 stealth missiles, and destroys a billion-dollar warship. Then, it drives away. Or you just leave it. Who cares? It has no soul. No mother waiting for a letter. It is the perfect expendable assassin. For the enemy commander, this is a nightmare. You bombard an island, wasting millions in ordnance, and what did you kill? A truck. Meanwhile, your fleet is sinking. But how do you move these robots around without getting blown up? The big gray ships, the L-class, are massive targets. A satellite can see them from space. So, the Marines are building a ghost fleet. The medium landing ship, LSM. It's small, it's cheap, and crucially, it looks boring. It looks like a commercial inter-island ferry. It hides in the noise of civilian shipping traffic. While the enemy is hunting for aircraft carriers, these little ships are scurrying between islands like ants, dropping off missile trucks, drones, and supplies. They create a logistic web that is impossible to cut because there are too many strands. This is distribution. Survival through dispersal. The ultimate weapon, joint all-domain command and control. But the scariest weapon isn't a missile or a ship. It's the software. Remember the F-35B? In the hands of a Marine, it isn't just a fighter. It is a sensor node. The pilot sees a target 100 miles away. He doesn't shoot. He beams the data to the ground. A Marine on an island, sitting next to a robot truck, gets the signal. Launch. This is JADC-2. It connects the submarine, the jet, the satellite, and the guy in the jungle into one brain. When the enemy commander calls for fire support, the American missile is already in the air. This isn't a fight. It's an execution by algorithm. You might think, well, the enemy has missiles too. What makes the US special? Money? No, it's culture. In many armies, Imperial Japan was a classic example. The Army and Navy hate each other. They hide information. They refuse to cooperate. In the US military, joint operations is a religion. Look at the command structure. The Amphibious Task Force Commander, Navy, and the Landing Force Commander, Marine. Who is in charge? It depends. When they are at sea, the Navy is the boss. The Marines are the passengers and the bodyguards. The moment the first boot hits the sand, the baton passes. The Marine general takes charge. The Navy's guns and planes become his assets. This fluid support and supported relationship is incredibly hard to master. It takes decades of training, arguing, and drilling to get right. And now, with the new doctrine, it gets even crazier. The Marines aren't just supported by the Navy. They are supporting the Navy. The Marines are on the island to kill the ships hunting the carrier. The land force protects the sea force. It's a complete inversion of military history. And it gives the US a flexibility that rigid, top-down command structures cannot replicate. You can copy the missiles. You can't copy the handshake between the admiral and the general. So, did the Marine Corps destroy itself by getting rid of tanks? No, They save themselves. The history of the U.S. Marines is a history of paranoid evolution. They know that if they become obsolete, they get disbanded. In World War II, they invented amphibious assault. In the Cold War, they pioneered the helicopter assault. Today, they are pioneering distributed lethality. They looked at the tank and said, "You are a liability." They looked at the aircraft carrier and said, "You are a target." They are betting the farm on being smaller, faster, and smarter. In the war of the future, there will be no grand fleet battles, no massive D-Day landings. There will just be silence, then a flash of electronic noise, then the impact of 1,000 missiles fired from empty islands by invisible soldiers. You might not see the face of the Marine who defeats you. You will only feel the result. Technology changes, the enemy changes, but the motto stays the same: Semper Fidelis, always faithful, and first to fight. They aren't waiting for the future. They are building it. What do you think? Is giving up armor a mistake? Can a light force really stop a heavy naval invasion? Let me know in the comments.